Before diving into this incredible story, remember to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every story has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The rain fell in fine drops on the narrow alley, reflecting the neon lights of the streetlights. A trembling 10-year-old black boy stood against the wet wall of a building, his wide eyes staring at the policeman who had caught him. The heavily armed policeman wore a cruel smile. "You want to get out of here? Eat this," he said, throwing a dead rat at the boy's feet. The boy instinctively recoiled in horror. Passers-by averted their eyes, some whispering, but no one dared to intervene. "Go on, eat him," shouted the policeman, his voice full of disdain. The boy felt his legs buckle, his heart pounding. He looked around, searching for a way out, but there was none. At the same time, a few kilometers away, a man's phone vibrated. An FBI special agent for over 20 years, he had just received a cryptic message: his son was in danger. Memories of all his dangerous investigations and ruthless criminals flooded back to him, but this time, the threat was personal. His blood ran cold. The policeman, oblivious, laughed as he watched the child tremble. He didn't know that the son he was humiliating wasn't just an ordinary boy. His father, the FBI agent, had the power and the means to track him down and punish him for his actions. A few minutes later, the police officer's phone rang. A cold, authoritative voice resonated in his ear. "This is the FBI. We have an incident involving your behavior. Prepare to answer for it." The policeman's face froze. He realized too late that he had just provoked the wrath of someone he couldn't underestimate. Humiliation, regret, and fear gripped him as the rain continued to fall, cold and relentless, on the alley where karma had just struck. The police officer, still reeling from the call, tried to compose himself. He looked around, but the alley suddenly seemed narrower, more oppressive. His hands trembled slightly. "It's impossible," he murmured, his face pale. Meanwhile, the boy, still huddled against the wall, wiped away his tears. Fear was beginning to give way to a strange feeling of relief. He knew his father would come. And he wouldn't have to fight alone. A few kilometers away, in the FBI's ultra-secure office, the special agent furiously typed away. Every second counted. He knew exactly who was responsible for his son's humiliation. And for him, it wasn't just a matter of justice, it was personal. He immediately ordered, "Locate him. I want his full name and exact location. Now." The screens flashed, data rapidly assembling. The agent stood, his gaze determined, ready to strike the decisive blow. In the alley, the police officer suddenly felt his phone vibrate again. This time, a message appeared on the screen. "We know who you are. You will be held responsible for your actions." Sweat beaded on his forehead. He looked around, but no one was there to help him. A piece of plastic flew into his eye, and he felt the anxiety rising. Every passing second brought him inexorably closer to a confrontation with someone he could neither intimidate nor escape. The boy looked up. A glimmer of courage now shone in his eyes. He knew that injustice was about to meet its most powerful opposite. And that on that day, nothing would ever be the same again. The policeman's phone was still vibrating. But this time, it wasn't just a simple message. A deep, cold, and authoritative voice rang out. "This is the FBI special agent. I know exactly what you did to my son." The policeman took a step back, his heart pounding in his chest. He tried to hide his fear behind a forced smile. It was just a game, I didn't know." He stammered. "A game?" the officer repeated with an icy laugh. "Making a child eat a rat is not a game." The police officer felt his legs buckle. He had never faced anyone with such power and determination. The FBI agent, in just a few minutes, had located his position using the GPS data from his phone and his surveillance cameras. A siren wailed in the distance. The police officer looked around, panicked. Soon, black and white vehicles appeared, surrounding the alley. The special agent arrived in person, stepping out of his car with an imposing presence. His gaze fixed on the police officer with a blood-curdling intensity. "You thought you could humiliate my son with impunity?" he asked calmly, but every word sounded like a sentence. The police officer tried to speak, but no words came out. He knew he was trapped. The officer took a few steps forward, each movement measured and precise. "Today, you're going to learn what it feels like to be completely powerless." The boy, watching the scene from the corner of the alley, felt a wave of justice and relief wash over him. He knew his father wouldn't let this act of cruelty go unpunished. And for the first time since that morning, he felt safe. The policeman, for his part, understood that his life had just been turned upside down. Everything he had thought he controlled was now slipping away from him. Karma, as swift as it was brutal, had just struck. The police officer was now surrounded by FBI agents. Every breath felt heavy, as if the air had been stolen from him. His morning arrogance had vanished, replaced by pure, visceral fear. The special agent approached him calmly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You thought you could intimidate my son," he said slowly, each word landing like a hammer blow. "Without consequences?" The policeman lowered his eyes, unable to meet the man's gaze. Shame and fear mingled in an almost unbearable mixture. "As of today, you will be suspended, questioned, and charged with abuse of power and cruelty to a minor," the officer stated. "You will never return to this position until you have answered for your actions in court." The boy stepped forward timidly, his hands clasped, but his eyes shone with gratitude and pride. "Dad, thank you," he murmured. The officer placed a hand on his son's head and looked him straight in the eyes. "No one can hurt you with impunity." "Never." The police officer was escorted, helpless, toward the FBI vehicles. He felt that each step brought him closer to his punishment. Bystanders who had witnessed the scene murmured among themselves, shocked by the sudden turn of events. In the alley, the boy finally smiled. Fear had vanished, replaced by safety and justice. He had learned that morning that gratuitous cruelty sooner or later met with a much greater force. And that sometimes, karma could strike faster and harder than one could imagine. As the officer and his son walked away, the humiliated and powerless policeman knew he would remember this day for the rest of his life. A day when injustice had been righted, and when a simple act of cruelty had unleashed an implacable justice.